This is a very personal story. Some of you know me, a lot of you don't know me, but I'm still going to tell you a story about me. So I'm the boy there in the top right with his finger like this because my teacher said you have to smile, and I said I am smiling. That is my smile. Also, I don't remember the girl on the right, but she has an amazing dress. Anyway, I grew up as a white boy, of course. I had a family and I had friends, I had schools. I went to school and I had hobbies. But I never really felt myself connecting to anyone. My friends made jokes that were hard for me to understand, too hard to see the humor in, and they had interests that were nothing related to my interests. Because as a boy I was expected to like action figures, to like sports, to like toy cars and to play with them. And the things I did like, I was ashamed of telling people. Because when there was something that I liked or that someone liked and it didn't really fit the norm, the people around me make fun of them. And I've been so afraid to be different that there are a lot of things that I liked when I was a kid and later on that I actually never told anyone. And at one point I just thought that everyone was faking it, trying to do what everyone expects them to do. But I didn't really want to do that. And that made me feel like I was the problem. So growing up in a culture that is dominated by straight, cis, white men makes it hard not to look and act like one. At least that was how it was for me. I learned that like healthy white men, straight men, are normal. They're kind of like the baseline. And being accepted meant acting like one. So this feeling of being the problem, if I didn't conform to what people expect of me, carried throughout my entire life. I've been very distant, I've been very quiet, and I didn't voice my own original opinions because I was afraid of what people might think of me. And I didn't care about my looks. I gained a lot of weight. I didn't care about my health because I didn't really see any reason to, because I couldn't be who I wanted to be. And I took this with me into my job, where I would ignore all the sexist jokes that were made in the meeting rooms, where I worked with people that were belittling each other because that was just their way of communication. And when I saw people get shut down because they weren't straight white men, I didn't really understand that. And because I wasn't really like them, because I couldn't join in, I wasn't being taken seriously by them. And I was afraid to voice my opinion, but I always thought that I was the problem. At one point, something changed in my life. So I met Leah, who is now my wife, and she was the very first person who truly believed in me. She was interested in what I had to say and didn't really laugh at any controversial opinions that I had. She challenged me in my way of thinking, but it still took a really long while before I actually was able to voice my thoughts. So in 2009, there was another turning point in my life. I had a new colleague who was there very briefly, but he told me about tech conferences, about Frontiers, for example. Now, I was a .NET developer, like I said before, but he thought that I would fit in, and he wasn't wrong. Like, Frontiers was the first conference where I met people who were a little bit more similar like me, who had a passion for what they did instead of seeing it as a job, and who were excited about being part of the coming changes. I mean, this was in 2009. Back then they had HTML5 was just out, CSS3 was just out, and everyone wanted to be a part of it. And I knew I wanted to be part of that community. So I did. I changed it as to a front-end developer. At least that's what I wanted to do. But when I told my boss about being a front-end developer, he said, yeah, that's what the interns do. I don't know if you remember that time. But as you can imagine, I was gutted, but Leah pushed me to what I wanted to do. She didn't really tell me to quit my job, but I did. So when I told my boss about why I wanted to quit, and I said that I found a role as a senior front-end engineer, he said, I don't think you're ready for that. I don't think you have in it what it takes. So he said that front-end development is for interns, but I didn't have what that took, and I was there for 5 years. So I was confused, like Leah believed in me. I finally started to believe in a little bit in myself, but this man here, he didn't believe in me. So this was a sort of a light that went on to me very dimly, that I maybe was not the problem, but he was, that they were. So after this, a lot of stuff happened over a couple of years. I worked at different companies. I was at places that believed more in me and made me believe more in myself. I started giving talks at conferences, helped out with events, and joined initiatives like webplatform.org and Device Labs, all the things that died. We moved towards Amsterdam, and Leah and I started organizing our own events, NL HTML5. I really felt like I was helping the community, but that the community itself was also helping me, because standing on stage every month, talking about myself and my ideas, and giving people a platform to talk about themselves and their ideas felt really empowering. And with going to events and organizing conferences and all different kind of things, I met a lot of people. And I noticed that there was a vocal minority who was trying to change the tech for good. It made me see that the place that I worked at wasn't perfect. It was still a boys' club that centered around drinking and playing foosball. And I noticed that at that company, that was not going to change very fast. And I noticed that more and more about how unbalanced the tech scene was, and how straight, cis, white men were dominating. And even though I felt like I was one of them, I didn't really care for it. But except trying to help people get into tech, I wasn't really sure on how to help that. So then, in 2016, I was speaking at the first edition of RuhrJS. I'm not making this as a commercial for RuhrJS. I gave this talk last week at RuhrJS as well, just a side note. And like RuhrJS changed a lot for me. I'm going to mention a few people. Some of you might know, some of them you might not, who have meant a lot for me. And first was Madeleine, the organizer here, of course. The way that she put the conference together was amazing for me. It was the first time that I went to a conference that cared so much about inclusivity and about the community. And the way that she handled everything with a power and determination was really inspiring for me. And it made me rethink about how conferences should work. I also met other people there, but I want to especially mention Ola Gesidlo. She taught me about how to be a better ally, but also about how to be a strong individual. Ola doesn't do what other people want her to do. Every time I've talked to her, she helped me understand the tech scene from other perspectives, but also my own place in it. And I think that she's one of the strongest people I've met in my life. And then after RuhrJS, I met Martin Split, who showed me that I don't have to fit into anyone's view. Like, even if I'm straight, even if I'm white, I can be myself without compromise, and I'm not making a fool of myself, I'm just being me. But what all these people have in common is that they accepted me for who I am. A year later, I joined yet another new company, and that's where I met Stephanie Niemet, who also spoke here at RuhrJS before, not this year, but other years. Stephanie challenged me to really think about the world and myself. I asked her not to hold back on giving me feedback, and she didn't. So she shared with me everything that frustrated her, not just about the things that I was saying or the things that I did, but also what everything around her as well. But the best of all, she was the second person to support me in everything that I wanted to do, and someone who I could share everything that I wanted with. We quit our first job together when our boss broke the code of conduct at RuhrJS in 2017. And that's another story that I'm willing to talk about after a few beers. But that was when I learned that it was not normal for a white man to quit a job over something like that. But the company still made me feel like Stephanie and I were the problem, that we were overly emotional or something like that. And over the past 2 or 3 years, queer pop culture started entering my life. Queer Eye, Drag Race, Paris is Burning, Pose, they all showed me of a world that I didn't know as well. And they made me question myself, but in a good way this time. So, for those who know, RuPaul has RuPaul's Drag Race. I don't agree with a lot of things he says, but one of the things that I do agree in, and one of the most memorable things to me that he said, is that what other people think of me is none of my goddamn business. So he lives by that, and you notice in everything that he does, he lives by that. But the people that I surrounded myself with, Leah, Ola, Stephanie, Martin, they all seem to live like that as well. And in Paris is Burning and in Pose, which is a photo of it, they show a group of people that live in poverty and that live in an extremely dangerous world to them. And one of the reasons is that they want to be themselves, want to be able to walk around and be themselves without compromise to what society expects of them. So I took a look at myself, and I thought, is the way that I'm living the way that I want to be living, or is it just something that society expects of me? So I love fashion. I admire people that are able to walk around in amazing outfits, and not just because they want to look their best for themselves, for others, but because they want to do it for themselves. And fashion was my first way to express myself in a way that I couldn't do in words yet. I got great feedback from everyone in the tech community when I went on stage in a pink and black checkered pants, or when I had a floral suit on. But for me, that still didn't really feel like enough. It felt better, but not like what I wanted. And at one point, I started to question gender. I started to suspect that I might be a transgender woman. I had many sleepless nights, and I didn't feel good. I thought I couldn't share this with anyone. I felt like I was just trying to get into something that I recently saw on television. I felt like I was lying to myself. I felt that I was going to be one of the problems in tech, a white man trying to get attention. But I was truly questioning my gender. I didn't tell anyone. I had sleepless nights, and that's not a cry for attention. So I decided to share it with one of the people I shared everything with, my wife, Leah. And of course, she wasn't surprised. She told me, like, why was everyone laughing when you said that? That wasn't a joke for us. I'm like, yeah, well, it's just the way I said it, I guess. So after a while, we came to non-binary, to gender fluid. It's another story that I'm willing to tell after a few beers and some karaoke. Yes. Well, I won't get into depth with that. Drag queen Sasha Velour paraphrased Gandhi by saying, "Be the strange you wish to see in the world." And I agree. I want to show who I am just because I want to see more types of people in the world. So last week I was on stage in a skirt and in high heels, but then for the first time. And I've never had so many positive emotional responses from people. This was in Budapest, and it was mostly emotional because it's very hard to do something like that there. It got me extremely emotional as well, barely held it together, and it was a beautiful moment to me because for the first time I really felt that I wasn't the problem. And that is where we are now. By being myself led me to meet amazing people. I've joined an amazing company because of that, and it made me realize that I'm not the problem. And I know that this is a perspective of someone who was raised as a cisgender, white, straight man, one with a lot of privileges. I know that. And I don't want to say that you should all quit your jobs, because not everybody is able to do that. Or express yourself as openly as I'm doing now, because it's very dangerous for some people, or you just don't want to do it. But I just want to say to everyone who's just felt outside sometimes that you are not the problem. You should find people that believe in you and help you believe in yourself. Because what other people think of you is none of your goddamn business. Being yourself will inspire people. And I was in my 30s before I truly got exposed to queer culture. And I don't know how my life would be if that would be any, if my life would be any different if I didn't live in such a sheltered life. But as Jonathan Van Ness once said, when people say you can't teach an old dog new tricks, it's not true, because you can reinvent yourself and learn new things whenever you want. So reinvent yourself constantly. Learn about people other than you. Learn about life and be empathetic. And remember, you don't have to be queer to be empathetic. When you are in a meeting and someone makes a sexist joke, and people are laughing except for you, then you are not the problem. When life brings you down, and you want to run to the bathroom, but you're afraid of the reaction when someone might find out, you are not the problem. You're just not the problem. Thank you.